having said that, the only way that I think that I can cope with things like finding out that something that you thought was going to be a 15-minute talk and maybe some booth duties turning into something that might be 3 hours long about, topics that you have, how well versed I am in them. I'll be ready in 2 weeks, but like we're not there yet. Is I think like being ADHD. Like I think that is definitely an area where I can 100% say that if I was somebody who did not have my brain, I'd be way more stressed about this. But this is kind of, if anything, like the time when, like to your point about manic episodes, but like I've never had a manic episode and I don't know what that would be like, but there is like a certain high that I can get when like, okay, it's crunch time. Like I have like deadline, high, you know what I mean? When you're like, okay, we have to make this work. It's everything's coming together really hot and we got to do it.
That's the ADHD time to shine.
Totally. And it is. And so that's kind of it's a good reminder in some cases. We're like, yeah, this is a debilitating thing and it's not great a lot of the times. And we make it work and we have to make things work around ourselves and find ways to do things. But there are times, like you said, like the ADHD time to shine, and deadlines were like that, journalism in general was like that, but also things like finding out, okay, can you just pull a 3-hour workshop out of your ass?
Yeah.
Yes, I can,
My performance review is next week. And when I was going through the like goals system where you have to like input your goals and everything, I realized that all of my accomplishments for the last quarter were assignments that were given to me with like a 2-hour due date. They're like, hey, we need you to fix this. Hey, here's 10 minutes of shitty video. Can you turn this into a polished 2-minute presentation, like with exciting video? And that's my time to shine. I've got 2 hours and I've got a bunch of just crap to work with. And I have to make it pretty and make it fun and make it exciting. And you give me I had to write a 4-part series on the command line interface for OCI. And I worked on it for like 2 months because there was no deadline. They're just like, we think this would be a cool article. And I just kept like kind of plugging away at it. But if someone had been like, we need this tomorrow,
you would have had it.
I'd have been done.
Well, no, it's funny. I have to tell people that all the time. And like, and in terms of like how to work with me. And in some cases I feel bad because, I can't be more responsible and adult and have better time management and whatnot. But I am always pretty strict with people. I'm like, no, you need to give me a hard deadline. Like we need to schedule time to do stuff. And it can't be soft because if it's soft, I will push. I know I can, and I will. Yep. I will never have anything done 2 weeks in advance ever. That's just not how my brain works, at least not at this stage of my life. Before I became ADHD, and I've talked about this before, I really do feel like there was like a genuine something happened where my brain swapped. I was actually usually fairly proactive, but even then I wasn't one of those things where I was like done way in advance. But now like I've gotten pretty good to the point that it's like, no, it's going to be right up to the deadline. So if you give me any opportunity to push, like if you make it open-ended, it's not going to get done is actually the real thing that's going to happen. It's not going to get done. So I have to be pretty direct with people for my own expectations and for theirs to be like, okay, even if we need to move it past this, like you have to give me an actual deadline. And it has to be like consequences. It can't be one of those things like, oh, it'd be great if I had it on Thursday. Okay, well then that could be Friday, right? Like that's how I read that, right? And when I say it would be really great if I could have this Thursday, I'm great, cool. So I can get this to you on Friday and it won't be a problem. But if you're like, no, I need to have this Tuesday or else, okay, you're gonna get it probably a minute before the due date, but like that's when you'll get it.
Yeah, up until this year, I have always said arbitrary deadlines. Like if someone gives me a hard deadline and I know it's bullshit, I know that they're like the whole startup mentality is all about like, we need this in 2 weeks, but there's no damage to the company. They just made up a deadline to apply pressure. And my brain rebels against that.
Same.
But in the last year, I've gotten better about setting my own deadlines and adding a sense of urgency to it. And I usually set my personal deadline 2 days before whatever deadline I'm given. And that never used to work for me. That never used to work.
I was going to say, did you do anything different to change that? Because I do struggle with that. Like I can set my own deadline too, but it's usually much more realistic.
I
Like
don't
it's almost never early.
I gamified it to some extent. Like if I get this done 2 days early, I get to do X, for the next 2 days. Because and I won't turn the project in until it's actually due. And I'll take that time to fuck off and do whatever I want. So there's kind of a reward. I gamify it. But other than that, no, I just suddenly
You just were
was
able to do
able
it.
to like was able to like accept my own arbitrary deadlines.
No, that's good. Yeah, I usually I wish I could set my own arbitrary deadlines like earlier than they need to be because what really happens is that like although you know what I think I've gotten better with that in terms of waking up for certain things. Like I've gotten much better at least on timelines. Like I'm rarely early. And if I am early is usually because of luck. But I have gotten better about becoming more on time, at least for some things. And again, it's one of those things, if I know I can be late to something, I will be. But if you tell me, and this is why I always tell people, I'm like, no, if you have a hard deadline on something, like you need to let me know, because if I'm just open to being like, oh, we have this hour-long window, but I'm thinking like it's, we can go 15 minutes afterwards if that's, what happens, then like I'm going to come in kind of my normal time. But if you've got other things going on, I know I should respect your time more, but I don't. I wish that I did, but I don't. So like I need to like be told. But if I know like, okay, but I've gotten better. Like the Microsoft Build stuff was actually a good experience because I was on, other than the first day for rehearsals where I was 5 or 6 minutes late, and that was not even my fault. Like all the other days, I was there, if not exactly on time, and like 5 minutes early. And I was like, shit, like you actually left your house exactly when you needed to leave your house, which almost never happens. So I
I
don't know.
like it's super important to me to be on time for things, to the extent that for like the hour before I have to leave, all I think about is I have to leave by this time if I want to get there 5 minutes early. And I am crazy punctual for an ADHD person. Like
Yeah, same.
it's just I don't know why it's so important to me, but like a chiropractor appointment, a coffee with a friend, like whatever it is, like I'm always 5 minutes early. I get the table, I check in, whatever, and I'm just my whole life I've been bizarrely punctual.
That's great. I've always been like, now my sister, we call it Kelly time, and we know that she runs at a completely different time zone, and like and hers is probably a little bit ADHD, but mostly it's narcissism. And so we know that like her thing is just like she will tell you a certain time, and you need to expect about an hour and a half to 2 hours beyond that. So you even have to give her a different time, because she will. And I don't know if she does the thing where like I don't know if she like cogently knows like what the actual time is and then gives herself that buffer. Like I don't know if she reverse engineers it or not. I tend to think not, but like we have learned, like especially if we're meeting someplace at a restaurant, she's usually okay, although not always. But like if she's come over to my parents' house or something, like we know we have to give like a different expectation of when timing is. With me, I'm never that late because it will be like an hour and a half or 2 hours. Like it's not a 5 or 15-minute thing, but I'm usually habitually about 5 minutes late to
That's
things.
fair.